Imagine waking up one day to find your nation's wealth, its oil, gas, minerals, quietly stolen, not by war but by pen and paper. No headlines, no soldiers, just backroom deals and legal tricks. This wasn't a robbery. It was the perfect crime, executed on a global scale. And while the world was distracted, one country walked away with billions. This is the biggest geopolitical heist in history, and yet almost no one talks about it. Until now. In 1991, the Soviet Union, one of the most powerful empires in history, collapsed almost overnight. What followed was not just political chaos, but a once-in-a-century opportunity. As 15 new nations emerged from the wreckage, they were rich in oil, gas, uranium and strategic infrastructure, but had no experience, stability or leverage to protect them. It was the perfect opening for a global, legal theft. Western powers moved fast. Under the banners of aid and democracy, international advisors flooded Russia and its former allies, bringing plans for economic reform. In reality, this meant aggressive privatization. State assets, worth billions, were sold for pennies to insiders, foreign investors, and multinational corporations. Strategic resources changed hands quietly, legally, and permanently. One of the most overlooked examples is Kazakhstan, home to some of the world's largest oil fields. Within just a few years, major US and European oil companies had locked in long-term contracts, gaining control over crucial energy sources. While the local population remained poor and powerless, foreign interests took the lion's share, and the world barely noticed how it was done and who profited. The operation was subtle, calculated, and wrapped in diplomacy, Western-backed. Institutions like the IMF and World Bank imposed structural adjustment programs on post-Soviet states. These programs required governments to privatize industries, cut subsidies, and open markets to foreign investors. On paper, it was about modernization. In practice, it allowed foreign powers to cherry-pick valuable assets for dirt-cheap prices. Oligarchs in Russia bought oil companies for the cost of scrap metal. Western oil giants signed 30-year extraction deals in Central Asia. Telecommunications, railroads, and even water supplies were handed over through deals that favored outsiders. Local leaders, desperate for legitimacy and funds, signed away national sovereignty in exchange for short-term financial relief and political support. The biggest winners? A small elite of insiders, a handful of Western corporations, and geopolitical strategists who saw this as a chance to reshape Eurasia. The losers? Entire populations stripped of their natural wealth and left with collapsing infrastructure, rising inequality, and foreign control over their most vital resources. The aftermath, a world forever changed. The geopolitical fallout from this silent heist continues to shape today's global tensions. Russia's aggressive posture, whether in Georgia, Crimea, or Ukraine, is rooted in a deep sense of betrayal and loss. As NATO expanded and foreign powers gained control of former Soviet resources, Moscow saw not partnership but encirclement. The resentment brewed for decades and ultimately exploded into confrontation. Beyond Russia, entire regions were destabilized. Countries like Ukraine and Kazakhstan faced internal corruption, foreign dependency, and political fragmentation. The promised prosperity of the West's intervention never truly arrived. Instead, these nations became battlegrounds for influence, stuck between global powers fighting for control of their energy, trade routes, and strategic location. On a global scale, this heist redefined power dynamics. The West extended its economic empire without firing a single shot. Meanwhile, emerging powers like China took note, learning how influence can be bought, not just fought. The legacy of this operation is not just in stolen wealth, but in a world order built on quiet conquest. What happened in the shadows of the Soviet collapse wasn't just a transition, it was a takeover, one that reshaped economies, alliances, and global power. And while the world moved on, the effects of this heist continue to ripple through every geopolitical conflict we see today. If this opened your eyes, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications, because the next hidden story might just change the way you see the world again.